अस्सलाम वालेकुम एवरीवन। थोड़ा सा वेट करते हैं बाकी स्टूडेंट्स का, वो लोग ज्वाइन कर लें फिर क्लास स्टार्ट करते हैं। आप लोगों के अगर कोई फ्रेंड्स हैं जिन्होंने अभी पढ़ना है तो उनको कहो कि क्लास स्टार्ट कर लें, क्लास लाजमी ज्वाइन कर लें क्योंकि इसमें आज हम फॉरेन पॉलिसी ऑफ पाकिस्तान पढ़ेंगे। दैट इज़ अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक राइट नाउ। आवाज़ ठीक आ रही है मेरी? मुझे प्लीज़ कमेंट में बता दें मेरी आवाज़ ठीक है और वीडियो भी क्लियर है। माही चौधरी, अली रज़ा, CSS एस्पायरेंट, महताब, जो भी ओके ठीक है। 5 मिनट्स तक वेट करते हैं फिर क्लास स्टार्ट करेंगे। वालेकुम अस्सलाम। Students, we are actually done with the history section. Right now I am dealing with all the current topics like foreign policy of Pakistan, the relation of Pakistan with other countries and the neighboring countries. These type of topics in our further classes we will discuss these type of topics. Any of you, if you people have not subscribed that channel yet, that Apple of Knowledge on YouTube, do subscribe that channel because I will upload this recorded video on that channel for the later use. Our today's topic is foreign policy of Pakistan. First of all, we'll learn about what the foreign policy is, right? Foreign policy is one of the wheel with which the systems of international politics works. Every country has a distinguished foreign policy. Right, all right. Every country has a distinguished foreign policy, and according to that foreign policy, all the politics, all the relations, and import and export, everything depends on that foreign policy decisions. Pakistan's foreign policy is the neutral foreign policy. Basically, Pakistan does not want to be biased towards any country. The foreign policy of Pakistan was literally said by Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. He actually describes the foreign policy as, our foreign policy is one of the friendliness and goodwill towards all the nations of the world. What he said that our foreign policy is one of the friendliness and goodwill towards the nations of the world. We do not cherish aggressive designs against any country or nation. You people should remember that in Pakistan's foreign policy, we cannot have any aggressive stance towards any other country and any other nation until or unless our own national interest is affected by the decisions of the other countries, right? So what Muhammad Ali Jinnah said, he said that we believe in the principle of honesty and fair play in national and international dealings and are prepared to make our utmost contribution to the promotion of peace and prosperity among the nations of the world. Qaeda was inclined towards peace and prosperity towards the nation of the world. So, we will discuss the current scenarios of Russia and USA and other uh, China and other countries like Middle East, the issues in the Middle East, the issue in Russian and American politics, everything we will discuss in this lecture later. But first, you should know what our foreign policy actually is. So, Qaeda said, Pakistan will never be found lacking in extending its material and moral support to the oppressed and suppressed peoples of the world and in upholding the principles of United Nations Charter. In this whole paragraph about the foreign policy of Pakistan, the founding father Qaeda Muhammad Ali Jinnah, he did not say anything about that we will have biasness towards any country, or we will be aligned towards America, or we will be aligned towards Russia or India or Saudi Arabia or Iran or any other country of the world. What is our foreign policy is about peace and prosperity, and we will not lag behind, and we will not stay behind when oppressed and suppressed people need Pakistan. Pakistan is a country, its bases are on Islamic values and Islamic principles. So in our foreign policy, that must be depicted. The first point of our foreign policy is more and mostly India centric. It is a fact that our foreign policy is India centric. How it is India centric? Because India's stubborn antagonism to the creation of Pakistan developed a fear composite of India. This feeling of anxiety compelled the policymakers in Pakistan to find the support of big powers to counterpoise the Indian threat. After partition, there was a threat that India would invade, and India always thinks that Pakistan should be part of India. Are you people getting my point? You can just tell me in your comments. So Pakistan has developed a fear about Indian antagonism, and till then our foreign policy is India centric, revolves around Indian decisions and Indian policies. It is a fact. Although international politics, international arena and other factors, there are so many determinants of foreign policy. We will discuss the determinants of foreign policy as well in this lecture. India's stubborn antagonism to the creation of Pakistan developed a fear composite of India. This feeling of anxiety compelled the policymakers in Pakistan to find the support of big powers in counterpoise the Indian threat. Actually, India hated the emergence of Pakistan and had a wish to undo it as its earliest stage. Mahi Chaudhary, you were saying that I should explain it in Urdu as well. I'll try to explain the topic in Urdu, but what I prefer is you people should have an understanding of English as well, because if you cannot understand in English, you cannot write a good answer or critical analysis in English as well. So in your paper, you have to write your answer and your critical analysis in English language. So come out of your comfort zone and try to understand what the language is. It would be helpful. I know English is not our mother tongue. English is a second language, and it is difficult to understand things in English, but try to understand it in English. Just to teach you people in Urdu, it is very easy for me as well. To make you people understand in your language, it is very easy for me as well, but I don't think so it would be helpful enough. So you people should have a good understanding of that language as well, and for this you can also create your own analysis as well. Just give me 1 minute, Shazia. दरवाज़ा बंद कर दो. So why our foreign policy is Indian centric? Because we have wars with India, we have issues, water issues with India. The Kashmir issue is a bone of contention in Indian and Pakistani relationships. Later on, we have full-fledged wars like 1965 war. Then we had the war of 1971. India party. We do blame that Indian forces helped. Our part of Pakistan to just dismantle from Pakistan. That is the East Pakistan, right? That is right now Bangladesh. So all these wars, all these interferences, all these interventions of Indians in Pakistani politics and Pakistan, that is basically the major determinant of Pakistani foreign policy. We need why we need arms, why we should be economically stable, why we need our borders so secured, just because of India. Afghanistan also is a problem, but India is the major problem, and there are always issues in Indian and Pakistani governments. So India is the basic reason of our Indian centric foreign policy. What are basically the objectives and determinants of Pakistan foreign policy? We will discuss the objective first. The concept of objective, which is essentially an image of the future state of affairs and future set of conditions that governments through individual policymakers aspire to bring about by wielding influence abroad, by having good relations with your neighbors, and by changing or sustaining the behavior of other states. Basically, the objective of your foreign policy is to sustain the changing behavior of other states. Iram, I will share my notes, but I only have very few notes of my own written notes, like 2-3 topics. I seldom make notes about things, so whatever notes I will find, I'll share with you people. And one thing that I have left basically studying these type of notes and books long ago, so I have to find the notes right now. So what is the basic objective of our foreign policy? Is to sustain the changing behavior of other states. That is your foreign policy. What is happening in the world, it should not affect the national interest of. Okay, I'm repeating the objective. The objective of the foreign policy is to sustain the good relations with changing worlds. Okay, all the objectives of the national of your national foreign policy or the foreign policy of any country can be explained in a single word, that is your national interest. Foreign policy is always made to secure your national interests. So what are the national interests of the country? That is economic interest, religious, political, uh, good for the people and good for the country, everything that comes in the objective of your foreign policy. There are certain determinants that explain the foreign policy of a country. First of all is your national security. The main objective and the determinant of foreign policy of Pakistan and any other country, we are right now studying about Pakistan. So the main objective and determinant of the foreign policy of Pakistan is its national security or independence, its sovereignty, its national independence, its security. When Pakistan was a very new state and a born state, there was need to make plannings for its security. Any state needs to make planning for its security, so it happens with Pakistan as well. So Pakistan First of all, Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Liaquat Ali Khan, they both very sincerely formulated Pakistan's foreign policy, and for that day we are following that foreign policy. Pakistan formulated its foreign policy on the basis of national security. At that time, what was the basic need? The basic need was the national security of Pakistan, because Pakistan came into being after so many struggle, after the war, after that harsh realities of the partition. So at that time, what was the main determinant for the foreign policy? That was the security of Pakistan, national security, border securing, everything about security. That was the basic objective at that time for the foreign policy of Pakistan. It gave due importance to the national security, establishing external relationships with other countries. Pakistan respects the national integrity and political independence of other countries as well. Pakistan respects the national identity and security of other countries, including India, including Bangladesh, including your neighboring countries, that is Afghanistan, China, Iran, Middle Eastern countries, any country. Pakistan respects the sovereignty and integrity of that country. What basically leadership of Pakistan preferred, why leadership of Pakistan preferred USA for the very first time? Just because of security purpose, just because of lack of economic resources. We people did not have economic resources, or we were not economically strong enough to fight or to buy any arsenals or warheads or anything like that, or to secure our nation without the support of some powerful country. So Pakistan decided to show some tilt towards USA. For the very first time, Pakistan showed the tilt towards USA just because of its security purposes, just because of its economic crisis. And we are seeing that embedded roots in our foreign policy today. People are saying, like, people are chanting some slogans like beggars can't be choosers, beggar can't be choosers, these type of things. Right now we are having very much institutional crisis, our political crisis, our foreign policy crisis. Its roots are far in our history, embedded in our history. The roots for the distorted or every time influenced foreign policy, these roots are basically goes back to our history. How far is Chinese support important for the Pakistan in economic and diplomatic fields? Kindly explain. China has very important role in formulating Pakistan's foreign policy, but again, China is not a superpower. China cannot influence IMF. China cannot influence World Bank. China cannot influence even United Nations or the European nations. Pakistan has its ties with European nations. Pakistan has its ties with USA. Its trade with USA. Every funding, the role of IMF, the role of World Bank, that is basically influenced by USA more than that of China. China can help Pakistan in economically, but again, the superpower is always a superpower. Your papa is always a papa. So you should admit that. Okay, the first factor is the national factor. The determinant of foreign policy is the national security. The second determinant is financial factor. At very birth of Pakistan, economically and financially, Pakistan was a weak country. Hostility of Indian National Congress to Pakistan has destroyed any basis of the cooperation between India and Pakistan. Efforts were made by the Indian government to strangulate Pakistan by the disputes of cash balances, defense stores, and Kashmir and canal waters. At very infancy, Pakistan has been entangled with so many issues like water issues, Kashmir crisis, wars, and anything. So Pakistan's economic stability was always at the brink. Economically, Pakistan was never ever stable. The Hindu leadership reckoned with the idea of partition in the hope that Pakistan was not economically viable, and by their antagonistic policies, they tried to hasten Pakistan's collapse. They always thought that Pakistan would not sustain for long. They even internationally it was admitted that Pakistan is a country that would not stay long, and it will merge with India eventually. But it never happened, and it will never happen. So Pakistan needs to establish close ties with the states that were economically stable, same like China. So Pakistan has to be in bilateral relationships with China, with Russia, with USA, with Iran, with Saudi Arabia. Every country, Pakistan needs financial support from every country. It doesn't mean that we will say that Pakistan, wherever Pakistan goes, it just beg. No, we do so many bilateral bilateral agreements. We provide human resource, we provide our land, we provide services to other countries, just to be financially strong. Every country do these type of relationships. Trade is always why we do trade. We do trade just to get economic benefits, just to have our foreign reserve. We all every country does this. Then the determinant is your ideological factor. The ideological factor is the basic determinant in formulating any country's foreign policy. So basically, Pakistan's ideology is Islamic ideology. What we do, we cannot wage a war against any brethren Islamic country. When Saudi Arabia asked to send the army, the armed forces in Yemen, the answer of Pakistan was no, we will not help Saudi Arabia in such kind of wars, in proxies, just because Yemenis are also Muslim and our brethren. It is right that our land shouldn't be used against any other land. So this was the stance when Pakistan refused to send any military forces in Yemen. That was because of that decision, Saudi Arabia, once which has given us 6 billion of the grant for our foreign reserve, it just took the money back just because Pakistan denied the support. So whenever Pakistan is denying support to any superpower, to any economically stable country, the country has one weapon just to hold back all the money and to damage the foreign reserve of Pakistan. So financial factor, ideological factor, financial factor, and your national interest, security, these are the determinants of your foreign policy. The establishment of brotherly relationship with Islamic countries and to raise voice for the promotion of solidarity of Islam, brotherhood in regional and international forum is the cornerstone of Pakistan's foreign policy. So what Imran Khan basically did, Imran Khan took this ideological factor seriously, and Imran Khan promote our foreign policy everywhere he goes. He promoted the ideology of Islam, ideology of Muslim Ummah, ideology of brotherhood. In the United Nations, only Imran Khan has the distinguished personality. I am not supporting any, again I am saying, I am not supporting any political figure or any political entity in this matter. But what Imran Khan did, basically he talked about Mujahid. There is a saying in Punjabi language that is जिन्ना दे घर दाने उन्ना दे कमले भी सियाने. ठीक है. So that is why we cannot say absolutely not. We should say no to the US, but in some diplomatic manner. I guess last day US asked India to stop buying oil from Russia. But what was the answer of India? India said that We cannot stop buying petrol or oil from India, from Russia, because the amount of oil which we are buying is equivalent to the amount of oil the Europe is buying in only one day. So why don't you say to Europe to just stop buying stop buying oil from Russia? Why USA cannot say to why USA cannot say these things to Europe? Because Europe is economically so strong, uh, economically equivalent to USA. It is economically strong. So when you are not economically capable, when you cannot have that economic stability in your country, you are never ever in the position to say no. I will repeat my last lecture. I said in last lecture, only pledges and promises only have some merit when the opposite party is of equivalent strength. So we are not equivalent strength. So basically we are beggars. Why our nation is not ready to accept it? You should accept it. Everybody should accept it. So in return, what we can do, we cannot bear corruption. Why any country's economy is bleeding just because corruption? We are we are everybody is doing corruption. When I get the chance, I will not stop. When you get the chance, you will not stop. Corruption is not just gaining some kind of financial benefits or financial money. Corruption is not doing your duties, right? Corruption is not taking the responsibilities. Everything is that kind of thing which is harmful for a smooth growth. That is corruption. So everybody in this country, from nation to the politicians to the persons who are staying on the higher ranks, they are corrupt. So why you all are corrupt? You should not be corrupt. When you don't want to be beggars, you should not be corrupt. Corruption is the basic evil. Going back towards the determinants of foreign policy. So this is the ideological factor, that ideologically we are Muslims, and Muslims will not fight against any Muslim. They will have a sincere relationship with Muslim countries. But right now every country has its economic interest. So countries are the national interest only is based on your economic interest. Right now the contemporary world is just seeing its own national interest and not the interest of Muslim Ummah. There are the nations in OIC, are they supporting each other? No, they have their conflicts, they have their wars among them. So there should be peace in Muslim world. Pakistan is the proponent of that peace. Then there is a historical and a physiological factor. Historical and psychological factor. A historical and psychological factor has always impact on Pakistan's foreign policy. Pakistan nation has faced bitter experience in the history of subcontinent. The Hindus left no stone unturned to curb or crush the political, economic, social and religious rights of Muslims. Why? We have read Khilafat movement. Why I just had a lecture, so detailed lecture on Khilafat movement, just because I know the facts, what were responsible for the backwardness of Pakistan right now. The Muslims at that time, they left the jobs. Muslims at that time, they sold their properties. Muslims at that time, they went into the non-cooperation movement. So that had the bad effect for the futures. What you do right now, it has the effect on your future life. What you do in your present, it simply has effect on your future life. So the Muslims were not economically strong at that time, not politically strong at that time, and not religiously, they were bifurcated. So right now the same things happen in Pakistan right now. just because the historical ties, just because the historical factors. The next thing that is responsible for the making of foreign policy, that is the unity of Islamic world. So, being an ideological state, Pakistan has been adopting basic principles of her foreign policy to develop cordial and friendly relationship with Muslim countries. Then good relations with neighbors. Every country has this type of foreign policy in which the country has good relationship with the neighbors. So no country could change her neighbors. That is a fact. In real politic, we say in real politic, it is a fact that no country can change its neighbors. Can you change your neighbor? Can you change Afghanistan, that we don't need Afghanistan as a neighbor, or we don't need India as a neighbor, or we don't need China as a neighbor? No, we cannot change our neighbors. So what we should do, we should develop some good ties with our neighboring countries. We should have foreign policies so impactful that our neighboring countries, we should not be fearful from our neighboring countries. We should not have to secure our borders with huge forces. No, we should not do that. Pakistan followed the principle that that the cordial and friendly relations among neighboring countries have always been worthwhile for peace and prosperity. Why we say that peace in Afghanistan means the peace in Pakistan? Because Afghanistan is our neighboring country. If there is no peace in Afghanistan, it will definitely have a spillover effect on Pakistani nation as well. We should have to secure our borders. We should have to spend more on our border with Afghanistan. If there is any unrest in Afghanistan, we have to spend more on the border. So we cannot afford to spend every penny on borders with Iran, with Afghanistan, with India. So it is from your diplomatic relations, from your foreign policy, that you can have peaceful relationship. And when you have peaceful relationship with your neighbors, when you have your peaceful relationships with your neighbors, you can you can do some productive works with your economy, with your present economy. But if you have war, if you have escalations on your borders, you will spend every money on that escalations only. So there would not be any progress if there will always be tense situations on your borders with your bordering or neighboring countries. The next thing in the foreign policy of Pakistan is to establish peace. Pakistan always strives to establish peace among nations. It always propagate the peaceful relationships, peaceful resolutions, and every conflict uh, can be sorted out with some bilateral dialogues and peaceful dialogues. It can be bilateral or multilateral as well. Then what Pakistan do? Pakistan supports the right to self-determination. Not only to the Kashmiris, but Pakistan supports the right to self-determination to every oppressed and depressed nations like Palestine, like uh, you can say Kashmiris, Palestinians, Rohingyans, in every country where they are suppressed, Pakistan always raise voice for self-determination for that for the people of that suppressed community. Pakistan believes that every nation must have the right of self-determination. Therefore, Pakistan has supported the demand of abolishing the colonialism and every movement for the exercise of right of self-determination in Europe, Africa, and Asia. Pakistan has always opposed in in early stages there were colonies, so Pakistan opposed the colonies, and Pakistan supported that there would not be any colony in Africa, in Asia, or in Europe. So Pakistan supported Kashmir, Pakistan supported Palestine, Pakistan supported Bosnia, Pakistan supported Namibia, Pakistan supported Vietnam, Pakistan supported every oppressed community. That is in the foreign policy of Pakistan. Then cooperation with UNO. In the foreign policy, Pakistan believes that Pakistan should cooperate with UNO because UN has a mandate to spread peace in the world. What Pakistan needs, Pakistan is a peaceful country and it needs peace everywhere. Peace in the region, peace in the neighboring countries, peace in the world. Peace means prosperity, economic prosperity, ideological prosperity, religious prosperity, and every good comes with peace. Independent and neutral policy. Pakistan's foreign policy at the core, at the basics, is independent and neutral foreign policy. Why I am telling you Pakistan basically do not say a lot about the Uyghur crisis, but we all know about that. So that means that in our country we can talk about that. But when you have some good relationships with the country, you have to do something diplomatically. You cannot condemn some countries so blatantly. Like, we are not condemning Russia, we are not condemning Ukraine, we never condemn USA. So we are not condemning China as well for Uyghur crisis, because again I told you that every country has economic interest. Again, Pakistan is having economic interest, and there are certain limits to which Pakistan can speak and to which Pakistan cannot speak. That is because we are not economically stable and we are not economically strong. If we are economically strong, we can say anything to any person. Same is the case with the person in the house. The person who is economically strong, he could have a good say in a house. Same is the case with the countries. Independent and neutral foreign policy, when there are certain ma'am, please give us some task at the end so we can cover a certain topic with all dimensions. Right, I have this idea in my mind. I'll send a question in the end of the class and you will attempt that question, but I'm not promising that I will evaluate everyone's question. At her inception in 1947, Pakistan had adopted the policy of independence and neutrality and followed the principle of non-alignment as the friendship to all and malice to none. Pakistan, in her first few years of existence, tried to maintain independent and neutral foreign policy in the ongoing Cold War. There was a reason why Pakistan had to have some alignment with one bloc and to show that alignment to one bloc. When Pakistan came into being, there was Cold War era, the capitalist and communist blocs. So at that time, USA was economically far more stronger than Russia. Still, USA is far more stronger than Russia. Russia was militarily strong at that time, and still Russia is militarily strong. So in the former years, Pakistan tried to maintain the neutrality in the foreign policy, but it could not sustain so long because Pakistan needed national security as well. Pakistan needed some economic security as well, just because of the threats from India, just because of the border escalations with India, with Afghanistan and other countries. So at that time, Pakistan needed some support from the outer world. So Pakistan showed the alignment towards USA for the first time. Pakistan showed alignment towards USA to the capitalist blocs, and Pakistan stayed away from the communist blocs. What India did, India was at that time politically, socially and economically strong. Though it was not that much economically strong, but as compared to Pakistan, India was economically strong. So India maintained some neutral stance with Russia and some neutral stance with USA as well. India is having trade with Russia, India is having trade with USA. Why? Because that is economically strong. India is the biggest democracy of the world. It has the greatest manpower, it has the greatest human resource. So there are so many factors that affect the foreign policy of any country, and the major factor is the economic factor. When we are not economically strong, we cannot have our eyes on our foreheads with with other nations. What's the differences between capitalism and communism? It's a long debate. Mujaddid Rana and I don't think so. In Pakistan affairs, we need that kind of concepts to be clear. But capitalist states are like USA, in which there is a democratic government. They believe in institutions, in democracy. But communism means that there must be okay, right. I will share a documentary with you, Mujaddid Rana. But all of you, you must have watched that documentary. The communism says that all all the gains, all the earnings, that would be divided in the people on equal grounds. Like if I have a 10 hectare of land and one person has 1 hectare of land, the earning of 10 hectare and the 1 hectare, that would be divided same on same grounds. Like I will get 1 kg of the floor, and even I have the 10 hectare of land, and the other person who has one, he will also has 1 kg of the floor. So most of the people, they do not they do not like the ideas of the communism. Foreign policy there is a documentary made by BBC or CNN, I guess. Its name is Cold War. Ashur Sajad, you are right that Pakistan was always with the capitalist bloc from its very inception. But whenever Pakistan tried to maintain some relationship with the communist bloc, there is always pressure from the capitalist bloc. You have seen that pressure right now in your country. So I am telling you the determinants of foreign policy just for the current scenario. Now this is your task to relate the determinants of foreign policy to the current situation in Pakistan. Why we could not have that kind of neutral foreign policy what other countries have? Why always we have to bear the brunt from the capitalist blocs? Right. What is the making process? Mujaddid, are you international relations student? Do you have international relation? We are learning about the foreign policy of Pakistan. If I will explain about communism and capitalism, then the main topic will be left behind. So let's come to our topic: how the foreign policy can be made. That is why you are having some issues with communism and capitalism. Okay, how we make the foreign policy in Pakistan? There is an administrative troika. That administrative troika made the foreign policy. In that troika, it is President of Pakistan, then Prime Minister of Pakistan, and the Chief of Army Staff. They all make the foreign policy of Pakistan. It plays very important role in formulating the foreign policy. It can approve or disapprove the foreign policy of Pakistan or can make any changes in it. It is very difficult to deviate from the previous foreign policy commitments made by the Troika. Let's suppose if Prime Minister is changed or if the Chief of Army Staff is changed, it is very difficult to deviate from the foreign set lines of foreign policy. One major thing that affect the foreign policy of any country is the head of the state. The head of the state matters a lot. Head of the state sometimes it is the decisions of the head of the state, that is the prime minister or the president. If we talk about USA, that is the president. If we talk about Pakistan and other countries, it is prime minister. Who is the head of the state? That has the major role in formulating the foreign policy of any country. So the major influence of thinking of head of state influence the foreign policy of any country. It happens with the foreign policy of Pakistan. When Imran Khan came in power, he was in the power to mend the foreign policy. He was in the power to formulate the foreign policy. So he basically thought about his own ideals. He thought on the lines on his own ideals. When Trump came into the power, Trump had different foreign policy. When Obama came into the power, Obama had different foreign policy, just because every single person has a different thinking way, and every different person has a different set of rules to follow the foreign policy or to make the foreign policy. So when Imran Khan came into being, Imran Khan said absolutely not. He was not ready to give any basis to any foreign proxy. He was not ready to give the land to the foreign proxies. That was basically the individuality of the head of the state. So the individuality of the head of the states matters a lot. Statements of the prime minister are regarded as the decisions of the government. They also lead the country in matters related to foreign affairs. By developing friendship with other countries of the world, he represents his country at regional and international level. The personality and ideas have deep impact on countries' foreign policy. The personality and ideas of that personality, they have deep rooted effects on the foreign policy of that country. Then came the ministry of we talked about the troika, that is the president, the prime minister and chief of army staff. They make the foreign policy of any country. They make the foreign policy of Pakistan. In Pakistan, it is an administrative troika. Then there is the foreign ministry. Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It has a significant role in formulating the foreign policy of Pakistan. It includes the expert and specialists of foreign policy and the officials of high ranking. They get ready foreign policy, keeping in see the fundamental goals and standards of the policy. They formulate the policy. They plan the programs regarding that foreign policy. And as per new constitutional amendment, the troika has been supplanted by the National Security Council. Ministry of Foreign Affairs is headed by the foreign minister, who coordinates the foreign policy matters with prime minister. Foreign minister coordinates the matters of foreign policy that has made by the foreign ministry to the prime minister of Pakistan. He issues country's foreign policy statement to the press, media, and defend the activities of his ministry. So this is basically the role of foreign ministry. Then there comes the intelligence agencies. They have the greatest role in formulating the foreign policy of any country. And in Pakistan, intelligence agencies have their role in formulating the foreign policy. Pakistan's intelligence agencies also play a very effective role in the formulation of foreign policy by providing full information about the objectives of other countries and other countries' foreign policies. Keeping in view these informations, Pakistan formulates its foreign policy. Keeping in view the suggestions made by the intelligence agencies of Pakistan, Pakistan always makes its foreign policy. Then there come the political groups and the pressure groups. The political parties and pressure groups have deep impact on the formulation of foreign policy. The political parties include the priorities of foreign policy in their manifesto. And what are the pressure groups? Pressure groups are the MNCs, that multinational companies, that is you can say Kia or Toyota or Shell or McDonald's. Every MNC, they serves as the pressure groups. Similarly, the religious groups, they are also the pressure groups. There are some religious groups, like we can say that Tehreek-e-Labbaik जो है TLP, Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan, TLP is also a pressure group. Do you ever think that you will have a foreign policy that would not be in line with the Islamic policies, and TLP would not be the pressure group at that time? No. So pressure groups always matters. Pakistan's decision to join Western Defence Pact was being considered in the vital interest of nation for security concerns, but it could not get public support and was criticized not only by the leadership of left-wing politicians but also by those who had moderate opinion in domestic and international politics. In July 1956, when Egypt nationalized the Suez Canal, the West considered this decision especially against economic interest. But the Pakistan public opinion was immensely in favor of Egypt. On other side, Pakistan's official policy was with interests of the West. In this way, the foreign policy making process selects its direction. What people think, what the pressure group think, what the opposition think, that matters a lot in formulating any kind of foreign policy. Then, what is the role of Parliament in formatting the foreign policy? The Ministry of Foreign Affairs usually prepares the foreign policy according to the directions of executive and put it before the Parliament for approval. When any kind of foreign policy decision is made, it is put forward to the Parliament for approval. Without their approval, there would not be any change in foreign policy. After discussion and debate, the Parliament gives approval to it or suggests some change in it. Then when the foreign policy go into the Parliament have a complete discussion on that policy. If it is approved as it is, the Parliament approve the policy, and if the Parliament thinks that there should be some changes in the foreign policy or in the suggestions, it also gives its own suggestions to amend the foreign policy according to that suggestion. So what we have learned about the foreign policy of Pakistan, I think you can understand the situation in Pakistan right now. This is the process, right? Yes, the process for what? Ashar Sajad, for what process? Okay, I am giving you a task that do you think that Pakistan still holds the neutral foreign policy? If it is right, then give your arguments. Lastly, you explain process of foreign policy formulation. Yes, I explained the process of foreign policy formulation. That is, first the foreign policy is made by the Troika. It has its Parliament has its own process. Then a foreign ministry what the foreign ministry do in that. What is the role of intelligence agencies in that? What is the role of the international arena in that? And your what is the role of international arena? All these things they have their effects on the formulation of foreign policy and on the process. Do you have any question, class? Or should I just end this class right now? International arena or world order? What? Mahtab, what are you trying to say? आप दोबारा पूछ लें सोवरेनिटी से रिलेटेड क्या है. मैं बहुत ऊपर कमेंट्स हो गए हैं. इन व्हाट पर्सपेक्टिव द क्वेश्चन इज एक्सपेक्टेड. आप how you people see the foreign policy of Pakistan right now in contemporary times? what is your analysis about the policy, the foreign policy which Pakistan has adopted right now? In your opinion, you can tell that how you are seeing this kind of foreign policy. Do you think that foreign policy is influenced by um, the foreign policy is influenced uh, by the statesman, or do you think the foreign policy is influenced by one man's thinking or the head of the state? These type of questions are expected. Sovereignty and territorial freedom is Pakistan foreign policy principle. Yes, Pakistan's foreign policy's basic factor is its security, is its national security, is its sovereignty, is its freedom. This is the uh, basic factor and basis of Pakistan's foreign policy. Any other questions, class, or do I have to just stop this live session? It was not a question, I just commented that foreign policy had influenced by international arena or world order. Exactly, foreign policy is always influenced by the international arena and the world order and international politics. Every country, every country is affected by the happenings in international politics and international order. You always you see that providing basis is against principle. Yes, it is against principle, but you cannot say that it is against principle. You if it is in the national interest of Pakistan, you can devise your foreign policy according to that. If the basic purpose of foreign policy, what is the basic purpose of foreign policy? You have to think in all dimensions. If the purpose of giving the basis is in interest of Pakistan, is in the highest interest of Pakistan and its sovereignty and its national interest, then it is not wrong. But if it is damaging Pakistan, if it is damaging the economy of Pakistan, if it is damaging the national interest of Pakistan, then it is wrong. Any other question, or thank you so much, class? I will post this lecture. This is very important lecture. Maybe you people means there is no hard and fast rule. Yes, there is no hard and fast rule in any politic. Even in the politics or in the national or international politics, it is a quote. Then in international arena, there are no permanent enemies and there are no permanent friends. When there are no permanent enemies and there are no permanent friends, then there is not a hard and fast rule. It is according to, but this is the, what is the hard and fast rule is your national interest. The foreign policy can be described just in a single word, that is the national interest. If your national interest um, is not harmed, then it is not a wrong decision. If it harms your national interest, then it is a wrong decision. Currently, geo-economic, if then we will think more to economic benefits. Today's enemy is tomorrow's friend. Exactly. In your politics, you can say that today's enemy is your tomorrow's friend. You don't know that in future, India would be our best friend. You don't know that. You don't know that in future Afghanistan would be our best friend, and you don't know in future China would be our staunch enemy. So in politics, there are no permanent friends and there are no permanent enemies. So you should have to devise your foreign policy in that way, keeping in mind that you are not friends forever and you are not enemies forever. Your foreign policy must have some kind of diplomacy in that. Okay, class, thank you so much. Thank you so much for attending this class, and if you people are interested to have a current affairs class, uh, then you can send messages in the group, but I have stopped your bundles of thanks. Thank you so much, you have joined this class and gave me your time. That is nice of you. And I think I should start some mock or evaluation classes. I will send you the details about that mock and evaluation class in the group, in the WhatsApp group. Thank you so much. Allah Hafiz. Allah Hafiz all.